Hey, friends. Welcome to this week's Soul Talk. Let's turn failure on its head. So, today we're going to deal with Gene Key 32. It's a money gene key, and it's also about this collective panic, that angst that we feel inside that we're going to fail. And fail what? In life. Fail in business, fail in love, fail in relationships, fail in life. The gift frequency is preservation, and the city is veneration. Those are big words. So I'm going to unpack a little bit of it, but we're really going to dive into turning failure on its head, because I'm not here to tell you there's no such thing as failure. It's all good. It's an opportunity. You already know that with your mind. But we need to play a little trick on the mind so that you can embody a deeper level of comfort, a deeper level of security in order to take the bold risks that are here for you to take. So, in a presence right now that we are in the wormhole of the eclipse. We just had an eclipse a few days ago, new moon in Libra, initiating this wormhole. And in a couple weeks, less than a couple weeks, we will have the full moon in Taurus, partial lunar eclipse. So we've got this opportunity for a reboot. And whether you're listening to it now or later, the energy of this transmission is the energy of this eclipse. It is of reboot. It is of shedding the old so that you can step into the new. I'm feeling, just presencing right now, I'm feeling that it's happening simultaneously. It's kind of uncanny, but as the things are shedding, there are new horizons that I get glimpses of. And I hope that's the same for you too. If not, sit tight, it's coming. Everybody's chart is different inside of a solar eclipse. So, ready for this? Let's talk about failure for a minute. So, the failure is inside of the ring of illusion. So already we're presencing that we're in the Maya. That's a Sanskrit term for Leela, the divine game, the dream. We are dreaming a dream. And the dream is of our separate selves. There's me and you, and there's this separate stuff out here. And we're dreaming that dream and calling it real, but it's really an illusion. It's the divine playing the game as you, as me, as everything. And that's what we get to remember, because illusions are here to be shattered. And that truth is terrifying to the ego, because it would rather believe like misery. I was going to say mastery, but misery. It would rather believe misery than it would to annihilate itself by being not true. So here I sit speaking that truth as an ego self, just witnessing that paradox. So the other gene key that's inside of the ring of illusion is gene key 28. And that's the shadow of purposelessness. So we can see that our fear of failure is tied to purposelessness. When we don't have a purpose or are not living inside our purpose, now that can open up a huge can of worms. Oh my God, I'm not living in my purpose. Now there's the panic, and now I'm really afraid to fail. That's not what this is about. What this is about is the purposelessness, is we've lost the plot on life. And this is our tee up for turning failure upside down. When we've lost the plot on life, we've lost the plot that our purpose at the highest level is to live well. Richard Rudd said that in the transmission of this gene key, and I'm so grateful for that, because that really is the truth. To live heaven on earth, to be divine in a body. And what would divine in a body do? Probably just like, and enjoy all the sensual pleasures that exists in a body that don't exist when you're not in a body. So that's our perspective, that that actually being on purpose is living well. So what is failure? Failure is the opposite of living well. It's the thing in the way to living well. So yeah, failure is a real construct. It's a real idea. The problem is we misapply it. We think, oh, I'm going to be a failure, so I can't do that thing. Or I'm afraid of being a failure, so I can't step off the cliff. Several women in the Evolving Sisters Network Facebook group were like, no, I'm not afraid of failure. This is what I'm, working on. I, as long as I'm not pressured, I'm not afraid of failure. And so here's how we're going to turn that around. Failure is being pressured such that I become panicked and I lose the plot. That's the definition of failure. So do you see what I'm saying? Turn it on its head. I came up with a couple things. The sisters in the activation group, when we filmed it originally, came up with some really awesome ones that if I remember, I'll present. You can always join us in the Facebook group, Evolving Sisters Network, and we have a post going with all of our failures. So turning failure on its head, get out a piece of paper and write it down for yourself. Here's some of my things. Failure is waiting for something to happen before I can start. How about something like, I'll start saving money whenever I earn X amount of money. So to me, failure is waiting until I earn that X amount of money to start saving money, because you can save $1. And so that turns it on its head. As you can see, be here now in this moment. So I wrote down, failure is trying to help someone who doesn't want my help. Right? Failure is sacrificing one important area of my life for another important area of my life. Like, for example, sacrificing relationships for work, or sacrificing work because your relationships are so draining and enmeshed or something like that, so needy. That's failure to me. Failure is feeding the habit of anxiety and fear. Maybe guilt is your thing. Just feeding that habit. Worry, maybe worry is your thing. That's failure, feeding that habit, because at some point those things are a habit. They're a choice. You can choose. I can choose a different way, or I just feed the beast called guilt, called worry. That's failure. I wrote, failure is the pressure to make something happen. Now, I don't always think pressure is bad, because that creates urgency and action. And some people think first, they feel second, and they act last. So they actually need a lot of pressure to act. But there's often times when pressure is just mental pressure, and human design talks about that mental pressure. And that mental pressure just creates that panic. And so failure to me is that mental pressure. I am in action, but that mental pressure won't quit. And so I keep feeding it like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. We're totally behind schedule. That's failure. Failure is believing your projections, particularly about someone else, but it could also be about yourself, that you're not worthy. Like, failure is believing those things that you think. The mind is always dual. It's going to think this and that all the time. So failure is me believing my mind when it comes to its opinion, even though it may have some good insights. But projection is oftentimes some disowned shadow. And so not owning that shadow is a failure. Failure is trying to manage someone else. People don't really want to be managed. They want to be seen and heard. So it's really a failure when I'm managing someone else. Oh, and I like this one. This will be my last one, and then I'll try to recall a couple others from the sisters. But one is, failure is taking things personally. Yeah. I was looking back at this year and thinking about some of just the major changes that have happened with relationships and friendships and some business partnerships. And I found some stickiness inside of me. And I realized it was because I was taking something personally, like it had a residue. And so I get to let go of that residue and get myself into like success or living well by not taking something personally that literally has nothing to do with me. One of the sisters said, failure is going on autopilot. And if you follow my work, you know the word autopilot. It is that mechanistic, unconscious, subconscious way, default pattern that we act. If we're not intentional and conscious, then we go on autopilot. And autopilot's defensive. Autopilot only cares about itself. Autopilot has no spaciousness to consider other. Autopilot isn't even tracking what's going on here. So I loved that one. Another sister said, failure is resisting this moment. That's like, bam. And then someone said, failure is thinking I'm a failure because I can't come up with a failure. Exactly. Comparing myself, that's a failure. So I hope you see where I'm going. Those failures are those roadblocks that we create for ourselves that are obstacles to living well. So when we're living well, we step into the gift of preservation because we really know, we have discernment. We really know what gets to go and what has to stay. There are things from the past that are tried and true that we want to take with us. And there are things that we don't. Like, so indigenous cultures, for example, there is a lot of wisdom of indigenous cultures, and we are coming back to some of that wisdom, especially like a cosmological viewpoint that holds everything non-hierarchical, that sees life as a river and a flowing chain of being. That I want to take with me. But human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, no, I do not want to take that with me. And so that's like discernment of what gets to go and what has to stay. And this is the period that we're in with this wormhole, choosing what gets to go and what has to stay. Preservation preserves. It is a past looking energy, but it's past looking in terms of like a graft. The analogy Richard Rudd gives is taking, like, say, a rose bush, like an heirloom rose, been around forever. And maybe you want to make something new with it, but you graft onto it something new, something that you want to bring, to couple with it to move forward. So it's like that. It's carrying the old and integrating it to who we be now. Because as Pluto comes, stations direct, it's direct now, moving ever so slowly through the last degrees of Capricorn and into Aquarius next year, we have a completely new normal. So we're deciding now what gets to go and what gets to stay. And you can see the train is fast because like AI has made the pace and the rate of change so fast that if we don't tune in, if we lose the animal body, if we lose the intelligence of the animal body, we're going to screw ourselves because we cannot compete with the swiftness of AI, but our animal body can receive the information through its intelligence that is beyond the thinking brain. And it can deliver us to a truth that is just as powerful as AI. And I say that with real conviction. I just texted someone and they said, I was just thinking about you. How many times does that happen? That was not AI. That was us in our 5D reality. That was me feeling this person as I woke up and then choosing to act on that. Hey, you know what? I'm going to send her a text. I've just had that commitment because failure to me Another failure I can say is not acting on those impulses to tell people I'm thinking about them. And so a life well lived is a life in connection. And I'm doing that through texting when I get that hit, that warm feeling inside my heart. You know what I'm talking about, right? All right. So preservation at the gift level reduces the panic because it already knows what's important. It is already chosen. It is already decided that anxiety, that fear, that guilt, that matrix is not what I'm choosing. And I will do the inner parts work to meet those voices inside me, not bypass them, meet them, so that a greater understanding can result inside of all of my parts. I love parts work, and we're going to do more of that inside the Evolving Sisters Network because I just think it's one of the tools that's going to carry us forward. And so what is worth preserving? Of course, love, wisdom, some ancestral wisdom, the sovereignty of our bodies, that we have a say in the matter. We can't control everything, but we do have a say. And that say is our responsibility to ourselves in life. That gets to go with us. That's part of our legacy. So if you've been feeling like you're less than, I invite you to consider that thought a failure and get into the thought that the biggest thing you can do is to live well, is to live with the principles of love and wisdom and beauty. And that takes us into the city of veneration. Veneration's a big word. It means reverence, saintliness. It's a title that we give to saints. And those saints, they walk their talk. They have embodied this kind of love. They are not driven by their failures, by their panic. They are driven by their choices. And so I love that Richard Rudd presents this. It just made the world of difference for me. And that is that the etymology of veneration comes from Venus, the goddess of love, the goddess of material abundance, the goddess of beauty. So can you imagine yourself venerated? I used to call my dog Venerable, and then I would say her little pet name that I had for her. Because at that point in her life, before she passed, she was a saint. I've seen this happen with people right before they pass and animals. I think of 2 dogs and 1 human, where there was this level of perfection about them. And really, I didn't know the word venerable, but that's the word. They were to be revered. They had walked through the fire, and everything that wasn't true was burned. They had preserved not their identity of who they think they are and needed to fight for it. Instead, they preserved the love. They preserved the beauty. They were a stand for it. They were committed to it. They embodied it. And I'm thinking about them now, and I just feel like my heart just blows open because truly they were a transmission. And that really is the essence of a saint, to be a transmission. And so I leave you today with Gene Key 32 and overturning your failures, seeing where the real failure is, not the made up bullshit failure in your mind that serves as a phantom ghost to stop you from living well, but the failures of the obstacles that keep you from living well. Let's be done with that. Let's burn that in the fire of the eclipse so that we emerge committed, fully committed to bringing forward that truth, beauty, and love, to walk our talk, and to be the legacy